So today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating and, yeah, pretty complex idea from our source material. It's this concept that each and every one of us might actually be living as two completely separate identities. You've got one, the living, breathing you, and then there's the other one, a legal fiction. Let's just jump right in.
And this right here is the big question. It's the central question posed by all of the source material. It's a bit provocative for sure. It's meant to make you stop and think, to draw a really sharp line between who you are, in the flesh, and how you're represented on paper. This single idea, it's the bedrock for everything else we're about to explore.
So here's how the source material breaks this whole thing down. You see your name written normally like John Michael Smith. That represents the living, breathing individual. But when you see your name written in all capital letters, that, the sources claim, is something else entirely. It's a separate legal fiction, a paper entity that was created specifically for the worlds of commerce and law.
Okay, so you might be wondering, how did this strange distinction even come about? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through let's call it the secret history that's laid out in these documents. And then after that, we'll explore the step-by-step solution they propose for, as they put it, reclaiming your living status.
Okay, let's get into it. To really get a handle on this idea of a legal person, we've got to first explore the very, very specific version of history that's laid out in our sources.
So the first piece of this puzzle, according to their narrative, is a pretty old legal term from the medieval period, Mortmain, which literally means dead hand. Think of it like this. A corporation, which is just an idea on paper, it can't die, right? So this was a way for those corporations to hold property forever. Since the entity never dies, the property never has to be passed on, and it avoids all sorts of taxes and duties. This is presented as like a foundational idea for an entity holding assets in perpetuity.
Now, the second crucial pillar in this historical account is something called the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666. The sources argue this law created a really powerful legal presumption. Basically, if a person went missing, say lost at sea, they could be declared legally dead. And once that happened, their assets could be managed in a trust by the state. This whole concept of being presumed dead, it's absolutely central to the entire argument they're making.
And when you lay it all out like this, you start to see the picture they're painting. The core argument is that this wasn't some sudden change. It was a slow, deliberate process over centuries. It starts way back with a legal name in Roman law, moves through that Cestui Que Vie Act, and then, they say, it all gets cemented with the Act of Settlement, which they claim turned the crown into more of an administrator than a true sovereign.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. That's all ancient history, right? How could a law from 1666 possibly connect to your life here in the 21st century? Well, let's take a look at how this historical framework supposedly builds into the modern system we live in today.
According to this narrative, that old system got a major upgrade for the modern era. The view they present is that entire nations were registered as corporations, that a single uniform commercial code was set up to govern all global trade. And, here's the kicker, that your birth certificate is the actual instrument that creates your legal person and then ties it into this global financial system. They even point to UN programs like Agenda 21 as the framework for managing all resources, and that includes people, under this corporate structure. And get this, the sources go even deeper. They make a really provocative claim about the term human being itself. They argue that if you look at its etymological roots, it actually defines a person as being bound to the land, essentially a serf with no right to inherit property. This, they say, is a key legal distinction that's used to classify people inside this whole administrative system. So, after laying out this incredibly detailed historical problem, the source material completely shifts gears. It pivots to providing a practical, step-by-step manual for what it calls the solution, a way for you to reclaim your status as a living individual. So, the entire proposed solution hinges on this one crucial point. You have to actively rebut that legal presumption. According to the sources, it's pretty simple. If you don't actively and formally declare yourself to be alive, the system just presumes you're legally dead, that you're lost at sea, so to speak, and it just keeps on administering your affairs in that trust. And here it is, the practical guide that's provided in the documents. It's a 5-step process. First, you formally declare your living status in writing. Second, you establish proof of life, using official records or even historical ones.
Third, you create what they call a unique living signature with red ink or a thumbprint. Fourth, you actually copyright your name to claim it as your own personal property. And finally, you file a formal, detailed affidavit that legally asserts your sovereign status and refutes all of those systems' presumptions one by one. So, what you should really take away from this is that the whole objective, the end game, is pretty straightforward. It's all designed to create an undeniable, formal, legal record that says, I am alive. The goal is to break that key presumption of legal death and, in their view, allow you to operate outside of that whole administrative system they've just described. And that really brings us to the end. I mean, the material we've gone through presents a really complex, detailed narrative, one that totally challenges the conventional views of law, of history, and even our own identity. So, is it a hidden truth that's finally being brought into the light? Or is it an incredibly intricate modern myth? The sources we've looked at, well, they present the choice, and they certainly leave you with a lot to think about.